Over the past couple of months of working with the Nikon Z8, I have continued to ask myself, why would Nikon create the Z8 when the Z9 exists? Because this camera is the exact same camera as the Z9 in a smaller form factor for $2,000 less. And when I started playing around with it, I couldn't really believe it. I hit up my point of contact at Nikon and I'm like, did you guys cut any corners compared to the Z9? His reply was nope. And then I'm like, what about the weather sealing, the things we can't see? And he told me that it had the same weather sealing as the D850, which to me means no, because the Nikon D850 gave us the power to create in any environment as well. But as I was digesting these feelings on why this camera didn't make sense to me and why it maybe doesn't make sense to you, is simply put, because we've never seen a manufacturer do something like this. Us as working professionals, as people who buy cameras, even as hobbyists, we are used to camera manufacturers crippling newer bodies in an effort to protect their lineup somewhere else down the line. So as you're watching this video, before we get into the review, I want you to think about these two questions. Do you think Nikon will continue to put their best foot forward body after body? Do you think that they're going to be able to continue the innovation? Maybe three questions. And the third question, do you think other camera manufacturers are going to take note that Nikon is not playing games? Because they continue to show you that if they wanted to, they would. This review is going to focus on real world applications, but for all intents and purposes, we do need to talk about the spec sheet, because if we don't, we can't talk about how amazing of a deal this camera is. For the video specs, if you know what the Nikon Z9 can do, then you know what the Nikon Z8 can do. You're going to get up to 8K with 60 FPS internal RAW recording in Nikon RAW. Nikon RAW is powered by Tico RAW. Now, if you want a full in-depth explanation on what Nikon RAW is, I have left a link in the description down below for my full review on all of the nerdy nitty-gritty of Nikon RAW and how it performs in the description down below for you to watch after this video. But on top of Nikon RAW, you are also getting the ability to shoot internal ProRes RAW HQ, that is 12-bit, internal ProRes 422, which is 10-bit, and H.265. Now on the photo side, again, you guessed it, if the Z9 can do it, the Z8 can as well. We are getting up to 20 FPS in RAW photo recording and up to 120 FPS in JPEG recording. So basically you're shooting slow motion video at that point. The power to create with the autofocus system and everything else exactly the same as the Z9. It feels no different. So really you're getting the best of the best that Nikon has to offer in that regard. Now, a couple of notable changes from the Nikon Z8 that you should be aware of are some connectivity things. An additional USB-C port on the side of the camera. So that gives us two, but we have lost Ethernet connectivity on this camera. And furthermore, instead of dual CF Express card slots, we have one CF Express card slot and then a SD card slot as well, which is very nice for those of you guys who need a professional body, but don't quite have the money to invest into CF Express cards because they are pricey. That being said, you will need the CF Express if you want to take full advantage of this camera's capabilities. Also, on the GPS side, we do have GPS in this camera, but we do not have the location logging available on the Nikon Z9. In addition, we do not have some of the GNS protocols available on the Nikon Z9 as well. So just something to keep in mind with respect to this camera. Now that we've gotten everything that you can Google out of the way, the spec sheet, let's talk about the real world application. How does that spec sheet line up in real world use? So to start off, we're gonna talk about the photo testing that I did, because this was a shoot that I'm absolutely in love with. We flew the Nikon Z8 all the way from Chicago O'Hare International Airport to San Francisco International Airport, about a 3.5-hour flight across the United States. And then we drove 6 hours to Yosemite National Park to shoot an engagement session at Taft Point. Now, this was primarily supposed to be a film shoot. I shoot film for my professional wedding business, but the reason why I took the Nikon Z8 out there was because this was the perfect location to test out the image sensor's dynamic range. And I have to say, I cannot find a single bad thing to say about this camera on the photo side. It really does give you the power to create. I would almost say that the dynamic range on the Z8 is a little bit better than the dynamic range on the Z9. I personally felt I had a lot more of an easier time recovering information if I had to shoot in a high dynamic range situation and I needed to perhaps lower my exposure to protect a little bit more of the sky, knowing I could recover those shadows in RAW. Now keep in mind, I do shoot primarily film for my wedding and portrait business, and most of my photography in general is actually film. But one of the things that I really appreciated about the Z8 is that I was able to easily match the colors of the Z8 with my film work. It matched with ease, and the portfolio overall looks very seamless. The gallery I delivered, I should say, to my clients. And one of the nice things is when I had to crank the ISO up to 2500, when I went to recover those shadows, right? We can always recover with digital, but what happens? Our noise floor starts to show. The nice thing about the noise on the Z8 is that at that ISO level, at least, it acted a lot like film grain, which means it transitioned still easily into the rest of the gallery, and I was still able to get very pleasing imagery overall out of this camera, regardless of what situation I was in. So on the photo side, again, you're not gonna go wrong with many options today when it comes to cameras, especially when I know what I started out with a Rebel, right? But you're not losing anything compared to the Nikon Z9. So really, you're getting the best of the best, if not something a little bit better. Now onto the video side, we had a similar methodology to our testing with respect to video. It was another uncontrolled situation. This time we were in downtown Grand Rapids in the densely urban area with the tall skyscrapers that we have in the city. And the reason why I chose this again is dynamic range. Really in cinematography, the more you are able to control the lighting, the less you really have to worry about the camera you are shooting on, because you can really light around those dynamic range limitations. So to give you an idea of the lighting, we shot probably around 2 to 3 hours before sunset, so the light was pretty directional. This gave us nice shadows where the building was blocking the sun, but also because there are some white buildings in downtown Grand Rapids and buildings that were getting hit by the sun in general, you have that really high dynamic range situation going on. And so when we were shooting these moving portraits, it wasn't until I got back into post where I really saw just how well this camera handled the overall image. And what I appreciated about the Z8 is that the image just works. It has this very film-like characteristic. Grading the image from the Nikon Z8 reminded me a lot of the work that I get when it's a red camera, red 8K helium. In addition, all of that color information we have stored in the file allows us to really get multiple different looks out of this camera. Now the form factor here is a little bit important too, because I was able to rock this on my old school Ronin S that you can see in the background. I could go on and on about the Nikon Z8, and there's tons of reviews out there on YouTube. But with respect to this real world application, and as a working professional in the photography industry, and as a working cinematographer and colorist, my final thoughts are simple. This is camera of the year number 2. Nikon has showed you that if manufacturers wanted to put their best foot forward, they would. And it is my hope to see more competition start coming out in the camera industry, because right now, to me, Nikon is the only manufacturer that is continuing to push innovation, and they are the ones who are truly listening. We asked for more connectivity USB-C, they gave it to us. They gave us our card slot options. They gave us a smaller form factor. They're giving us our firmware updates. And the fact that I can use a $6,000 flagship body and now come down to a $3,500 flagship body, the Nikon Z9 is $549, but I can come down to this body that's $2,000 cheaper, still get the same performance. Simply put, it's a no-brainer. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on those 3 questions I asked you and your thoughts on the Z8. Be sure to give me a big thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications if you have not. Follow me on social media. The links are in the description down below. And now more than ever, folks, if you are ever feeling uninspired, uncreative, or just want to give up on life, remember, every day, airplanes take off against the wind. Keep climbing, stay inspired, and as always, stay fabulous. I'm Sydney. I'll see you beautiful people next time. Peace out.